Okay, would like to call the meeting to order. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, PL 1975, Chapter 231, adequate notice of this regular meeting of the Planning Board of the Township of Franklin has been provided. Call the roll, please.
Mr. Betterbid? I know you're there.
Here.
Ms. Graham?
Here.
Mr. Johnson? Mr. McCracken?
Here.
Mr. Rich?
Here.
Mr. Shepherd? Mr. Caldwell? Mr. Rosenthal?
Here.
Mr. Reese?
Here.
Mr. O'Connell?
Here.
Chairman Thomas?
Here. One announcement before we start. If you're here for Louis Romero, docket ZBA 13-00014, hardship variance in which applicants proposing to add a detached single-car garage at 33 Bloomfield Avenue, Somerset, Block 308, Lot 21 in the R10 zone, is carried without further notice to August 1st. We will not be hearing that this evening. The rest of the agenda will go on as scheduled. Before we start, we have minutes of the regular meeting, June 6th.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Betterbid?
Yes.
Graham?
Yes.
Mr. McCracken?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Reese?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes, and minutes of June 20th, 2013, the regular meeting.
I move the minutes?
Second.
Mr. McCracken?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes.
Mr. Reese?
Yes.
Mr. O'Connell?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes, and you can let the record show Mr. Shepherd is here at 7:33.
Mr. Dominic.
Well, I don't know if he's really here if he's wearing that hat, though.
Hats off. Hi, Laura.
Hey, how you doing?
Mr. Dominic, have you got another microphone?
We could share.
You could take the one from Don's. Don's not here. We could
He's on
pass-
his way. He's coming in
Is he?
too.
Oh, just share.
Yeah, he's coming right in.
All right, anyway, voucher,
You want what?
Mr. Bradshaw,
So
July
moved.
retainer, 865.
We can share.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. First hearing will be Jason Azar, docket ZBA 13-00012, hardship variance in which an applicant is proposing to put in an in-ground pool at 40 Julie Court, Somerset, block 37.02, lot 7.17 in the NRPC zone.
Mr. Chairman, this is an application for an in-ground pool. There's one existing variance. There's an existing shed that is required to be 25 feet setback from the rear yard. It's setback 20. In relationship to the new pool, and there's also a shed on the property that is probably about 9.5 feet, and it's supposed to be 10 in the side yard. The pool equipment is supposed to be 10 feet. It's 5 feet. The rear yard setback for the pool is supposed to be 25, it's 13, and the impervious coverage is 30.3% where it's supposed to be 30%, so.
Okay, sir. If you'll pick up the microphone for me, I'm right here. Just make sure it's working. Probably not. There's two on switches, I think.
Yes.
Okay. If you raise your right hand for me, solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth,
I do.
and state your name for the record.
Jason Azar.
Okay?
You can sit down.
Okay, what's the size of the pool, roughly?
The size of the pool is 43 by 23 or 45 by 23.
Yeah.
All right off the top, would there be any chance of reducing? Just not working, maybe. Any chance to reduce any of the variances by reducing the size of the pool?
Well, I guess the thought process when I went into this was roughly a 20 by 40, which gives 800 square feet. So I got a free-form pool. So I wanted roughly a little over 800 square feet, so I made it to that size. I mean, I wasn't aware that I couldn't have a pool that size in the yard.
Is this pool already installed?
No.
Okay.
No, I looked at the at the map, I guess Google Maps, which it would have been good if you had, but it looked to me like what you've got really is a lot of green and forest behind you, so the rear yard setbacks are going to be really irrelevant to any resident behind you, because there is none. Am I missing something, or is that correct?
No, it's, I think you own the property, or the township does.
Yeah, I think that's Vice Chairman's point, is that there is no impact to the rear because it's open space.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the other thing, too, that factors into this is, I think, to some degree, there is a hardship in the fact of the placement of the home on the lot. You only have, I measured that the rear setback is supposed to be 25 feet. If that was actually applied to this site, it would be more than halfway through the location of the pool, which would basically push, in order to even have this pool, it basically would have to be right up against the house. So there is a reduced size there is a relatively shallow rear yard. So I think no matter what, if somebody was to put a pool in this backyard, it's going to be a variance, which I think is a hardship.
Well, it also appears that there's an irregularly shaped lot, which wouldn't help the side yard variances either, I would think. I mean, you probably could shift it to one side, but then you're off your connection with the house. So, you could probably, the shape of the property and the placement of the house probably are hardships.
What about moving the shed so that doesn't require, sir, over here. What about moving the location of the one shed so that doesn't require a variance?
I suppose I could do that. We're talking about moving it in a couple of inches and then, I guess, forward a couple of feet. Is that what you're talking? Because it's only off by like 2 feet from the rear, and from what I measured today, inches from the side.
Okay. So that doesn't really get us much, is what you're saying?
Well, move the shed for, I'm not sure the reason.
Well, so that you don't need a variance for it.
For the variance, okay.
Right.
All right.
That's why we're here.
Now, as relation to the pool, I guess that, we're just talking about the shed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is it on a cement slab?
It's on gravel.
So
No, all right.
it's movable.
Yes, I suppose it is, yeah.
Do you have what's the situation in terms of neighbors? Do you have neighbors on either side?
I only have neighbors on the pool side.
On the
One
pool
neighbor.
side. Okay.
On the, I guess,
So when you're looking at your house to your left, there's nobody lives there? There's no house?
that's correct. There's a line for an easement, I guess, access way for the easement to the left of me.
Okay.
So that shed is really not impacting a neighbor either, right?
No.
So on two sides, there's no real,
I think the only variance that would seem to impact anybody, if there's an impact at all, would be I think the pool equipment needs a setback variance. And that's something that's proposed, I believe. So the requirement is 10 feet, and they're proposing 10. So to the degree that there could be an impact, I'm sorry, 5. So it's something new, and there is a neighbor there. Could you address whether there's any way to make the pool equipment comply?
Well, there's really two reasons why it's placed where it's placed. One is I do at some point plan on extending my deck I have a second level deck. I have a walkout basement, so I have a deck up on the main floor, and I would like to extend that out. Right now, it's a 10 by 10. I want to make it like 10 by 25 along the back, and that would run into, if I moved the pool filter in, that would run into that. That was the reason for the location of
Would
the
this
pool
deck
filter.
be a second story, you said? So it'd be on the second floor?
No, but I planned on putting steps down that side, down, right adjacent to the house, right where it would impact the pool filter.
And does it have to be on that side of the property? Is there any reason why it couldn't be on the other side of the pool?
Well, I talked to the pool company today. What they're telling me is it has to be no more than 15 feet from the pool, or then you have to bigger motors and things like this. The other thing is there's a heater there, and all my utilities and electrical are on that side of the house, so I'd have to do longer runs to put it elsewhere.
There was a comment, and this is with respect to the, how close the equipment is to the side yard. There was a comment by the Environmental Commission that the equipment may make some kind of noise, and they raised the issue of whether or not some of that noise could be mitigated in some way, muffled or...
Okay, I did research on that as well. I called the pool company because I asked them if that was a concern. They assured me that the filter motor that I'm getting is a whisper quiet. Output is 60 dB, which is practically a whisper. New technology, I guess. So
that wouldn't be an issue then?
And plus, it's shielded by a 6-foot privacy fence as well. So I don't think it would be an issue.
Perhaps if the board is inclined to grant the variance, perhaps you make that a condition of the approval, that it be that type of equipment.
Okay.
Okay.
I guess we didn't resolve anything about making the pool smaller.
Oh. I'm not sure the reason why I would make it smaller.
The reason you would make it smaller is the same reason we asked you to move the shed, which is the same reason we asked you to move the equipment. It's so that the variances aren't as big. What we're trying to do is we're trying to put you more in compliance with what the rules are. And so far, everything we've asked you, you've given us a reason why you don't want to do that. That's not helpful.
Oh, okay. Well, okay. Well, to be compliance with a pool, what's the number then? What are we talking? I mean, if I make it the next size smaller, it's still going to be way out of compliance. If I stayed in compliance, my pool would be 5 feet wide.
All right, but if it made the next size smaller, you're a little closer to compliance than you are now.
You know, I'm wondering about this because I'm looking at the size of this lot, the location of it, what is behind the property behind it, and when we consider variances, yes, it's important to get things as compliant as possible. On the other hand, the question is, what's the impact? And I just don't see any. Whether we reduce the size of the pool or leave it as is, I think the impact on the neighboring properties is non-existent. So I don't know why we would necessarily, in this case, need to get ourselves more compliant for its own sake.
Have you talked to your neighbors about all this? Have you, over here, have you talked to your neighbors about all this? And?
Yes, well, I have a good, especially the neighbor on the side that my pool is on, I have a very good relationship and you know, he doesn't have any problem with what I'm doing. he's, as far as I know, I mean, he's the only neighbor bordering my property. All the other houses are at least 100-plus feet away. And I have a good relationship, and he's like, you have to invite me over. That's, you know.
That's what I was going to ask. When I went out and saw it, I thought the design fit very nicely into the property in the back there. And I see that it would, the access to the deck would make it a lot, you know, I guess just very comfortable.
I think
to
we
be able
have
to
the issues
out the
on the
door.
table. Why don't we open to the public and see if anybody has anything to offer, and then we can decide from there. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to make a comment or ask a question on this application? Your one neighbor, I'm assuming, is not here?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right, then we'll close. So this is obviously not, there's obviously not an impact on anyone who wanted to be here to register. So if there's other questions, let's ask them and move on eventually to a motion.
As far as the noise of your motor, you said it would be no impact to your neighbor as far as the sound is concerned. What hours are you going to be running your filter and how long per day?
Ooh, well, I owned a pool. I grew up with a pool. Back in the day, we used to run it 24/7, but what I'm told now is that's not the case. You only need 8 hours a day to run the filter. So, of course, the filter runs, you know, water for the slide or whatever, so probably just during the day. I can't see myself running it at nighttime, which you need.
And I think maybe the appropriate way to address that is the condition we spoke about before. You know, he promised to use that particular technology and then continued compliance with the noise ordinance. If there is a problem, if the neighbor complains, we do have an ordinance in place that we can enforce.
Did you get a copy of the general review comments?
Yeah.
Is there anything there that you need to discuss or can you comply with everything?
I can.
Well, he's particularly looking for you to reduce 0.3% of your impervious coverage. I don't know whether that's really necessary, but that's one of the things that he's looking for.
Somebody
I wasn't even, I had just glanced at that, but there was, number 2 is maybe another small issue. The existing fence along the rear property line should be relocated. Apparently,
Now, there's also, the pool equipment should be relocated to comply with the 10-foot side yard setback. Now, we just addressed that, did we?
Yeah,
not? So
that's his recommendation, and you can consider that.
No, well, the reason I say that is because the question was, can you comply with all of these
Yeah.
items? And I think we should, if he can't, or if we're going to provide a variance from them, then that ought to be addressed.
Yeah, I think he has to comply with them all except for the ones that you grant variances for. Because 3 of them he's requested variances for.
any other board questions, comments, and we'll entertain a motion.
I move approval of this application, subject to the equipment being of the sort that he described with no louder than 60 decibel, and that the noise ordinance be complied with.
Second.
Any further discussion?
Just for the record, Mr. Johnson arrived 7:35, just after this started, so Mr. Rosenthal will vote on this matter. Mr. Betterbid?
For.
Ms. Grauman?
Yes.
Mr. McCracken?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Four.
Mr. Shepherd?
For.
Mr. Rosenthal?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes, okay, good luck with it. Next is the Harris Fitness Group, docket ZBA 13-00013. Sign variance in which the applicant's requesting to erect a sign at 920 Hamilton Street, block 126.01, lot 1, in a general business zone.
Mr. Chairman, this is probably Mr. Shammy's easiest application he's ever done before this board. He also noticed that Carl Hauk, our township engineer who likes to write extremely long reports, has written an incredibly short, and his shortest report ever. He only has one comment saying he has no objection to this application. There's only one variance they need. The sign max is 30 square feet, and they're proposing 44.6. As you can see from the look, the square footage needs to be a little bit larger because they actually have 2.5 storefronts, so.
Good evening.
Yeah, that was working.
It's working. My name is Edward Shammy Jr. This is my client, Daniela Harris. She is the managing member of Harris Fitness Group, LLC. I learned a long time ago when to keep my mouth shut.
I think you got to put a little closer.
A little closer?
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
No, so it's a pretty straightforward application, as Mr. Dominic has indicated. Is that better?
Yes,
And,
you need to be a rock star.
Yes, thank you. I was in my previous life. And, yeah, the overall square footage of the sign is 44.6 square feet, which is why we needed to come in for the variance. I think it's going to be an attractive sign. It'll span across the two storefronts, and we hope the board will favorably consider it. We'd be happy to answer any questions.
Yeah.
Shall I swear her in, Laura?
Oh, yeah, why don't you do that?
Okay. Raise your right hand if you will. Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, I will.
Okay, and you are Ms. Harris, correct? Okay.
Switch on.
Two questions. The first one is there is an indication that their taxes and water bills are delinquent. I don't know if that's current or not. This is dated July 1.
I would have to refer that to the landlord.
Okay, so in other words, you are not personally responsible for that?
No.
Okay,
Not-
well, but
not-
you need to
Yeah.
kick him.
Yes, we'll definitely address that with the landlord.
Okay. Could you also just explain why you need the sign?
Primarily because we have two storefronts, and my understanding is that my limit was 30 square feet.
Yeah.
And because we're set back that far from the road and we're partially obscured by Walgreens, we needed a larger sign just to ensure visibility.
Okay.
I think in my opinion, I think the picture tells the story. I think it's perfectly.
Is this supposed to be lit?
It has, at night, it has LED lighting.
Okay.
Yeah, it's internally lit, right? Yeah, if I remember
Yes.
correctly. Yeah.
I think it's perfectly in scale with the building, and you can see on the picture as well, that clock tower to the left. This shopping center has been substantially improved over the last few years. This is along Hamilton Street. I guess they're re-tenanting the building. I think this is part of the revitalization of that shopping center. So it certainly, I think, would help the area.
I actually can't think of a place that needs a bigger sign anymore than that property. You can't, you won't know it's there otherwise. It's a nice improvement, the whole facility, the whole property, but if You also want people to succeed, I would think, so if this helps that happen, I think it's good. You don't have any more testimony, right?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Is there anyone in the public who would like to ask a question or make a statement concerning this application? Then we'll close that portion. Does the board have any further questions, comments, or maybe a motion?
I move that we grant the Harris Fitness Group a variance to erect a sign larger than is permitted under the variance in accordance with their application, under docket ZBA 13-00013.
Second.
Mr. Betterbid?
Yes.
Ms. Grauman?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. McCracken?
Yes.
Mr. Rich?
Yes.
Mr. Shepherd?
Yes.
Chairman Thomas?
Yes. Okay, good luck with that. And next would be New Jersey Buddhist Vihara, docket ZBA 12-00020. Applicant seeks a D3 conditional use variance site plan for a new three-story worship building, 4299 Route 27, Princeton, Block 5.02, lots 77 and 78 in the RR5 zone. This has been carried from June 6th. No further notification needed.
Yeah, no, the member? I left mine at home. You talking about this thing here?
No, the actual memo.
Hey, one, yeah. Take mine.
He was a planner, right, yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Well, they did,
Figured out that we don't like him.
Yeah, there is something.
there is an add-on. This
Yeah, but that's their add-on.
It's not ours.
That's why I said, because I wanted you to hear it.
Yeah.
That's what we are.
That's the last one.
He's got more for us, this guy. Displays.
Sure.
I always miss the first one.
Thank you.
That's the modification.
We can't make it disappear.
Got enough?
I don't want to get anything.
You're getting confused with all the
True.
temples.
We did it. We should do something.
He's always beholden gifts.
Thank you, sir.
Well, if that's the case, it predates me.
Statue of Buddha.
Love the big statue.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Peter Lanford appearing on behalf of the applicant. As you indicated, this matter was scheduled to be heard last month. However, we never got onto the agenda. What I have done this evening to assist the board, we have numerous exhibits that we will be relying on. Some of them were in your plan set already. Some of them are new exhibits. And what we did was prepared a package of all of the exhibits so it's easier for you to follow along. We'll probably be relying on all of those documents. And I actually marked them all last month in anticipation of proceedings, so I'll refer to the exhibits as marked. This is a D3 use variance and site plan application. We are before you this evening because we are proposing to construct a house of worship, which is a conditional use in the zone, and we don't meet all of the conditions of your ordinance involving churches. The two principal conditions, I'm going to refer to the report of Vincent Dominic dated May 2nd, 2013, We do not meet the buffering requirement. We will present testimony why we are seeking a deviation from the buffering requirement. We do need a parking variance. While we don't agree with the number that Mr. Dominack came up with as far as the number of required spaces, we do agree that we don't have enough parking as per your ordinance. We think that Mr. Dominic counted the first floor for parking when that's a storage area, but you'll hear about that. I also, Mr. Dominack indicated we need a parking location variance because your ordinance indicates that the majority of the parking is to be located to the rear of the building. Our plan indicates that we have 133 spaces, 62 of which are banked. And when I did the math, the 62 in the front are the ones that are banked, and 62 is less than the majority of 133. So I think Mr. Dominack is in error as to whether we need a variance of that. And the lighting we're going to correct. So those are the variances.
Don't forget the lot area.
The lot area, we have a 10-acre minimum, and we have 9.15 acres proposed. And also, we have the number of stories. Normally, at the end of an application, I sort of give a summation. I want to do something a little different this evening because after going through this application, and if you look at the application, it was submitted in August of last year. So this application has been around for almost 12 months. The reason it hasn't gotten to the board for 12 months is because we've had numerous meetings with staff concerning issues that they had with our original submission, certain issues regarding stormwater management, certain issues concerning driveways, and things of that nature. And we've had extensive meetings with planning, engineering, zoning to resolve those issues. When you hear the testimony tonight, most of those issues have been resolved. There are only a few minor issues left to discuss, and it was because of the efforts of your staff that we've gotten a plan to you this evening with very few issues. But the one thing that sort of struck me as I was preparing for this application, and as this board is aware, I've been here on numerous applications involving houses of worship, involving all sorts of religions. I've done Korean churches, Indian temples, Catholic churches, synagogues, et cetera, et cetera. When the township develops a zoning ordinance for shopping centers, you know, they have parking requirements, you know, which are generally one space for 150, and it normally works whether you have a little shopping center or a big shopping center. When they develop ordinances for office buildings, they have certain requirements, which generally work whether you have a small building or a big building. When they develop ordinances for warehouses, again, most of the time the ordinances work. When you're dealing with churches, every church that I've done and every application that comes in here is different. Some churches meet on Friday nights. Some meet on Saturday. Some meet on Sunday. Some have services that last 4 hours. Some have 3 services in a day. Some don't have any formal services. So when you're looking and trying to present an application or prepare an application and trying to fit it into your ordinance, while the township is required to have an ordinance, and this ordinance has been amended quite a few times, it's really hard to come up with an ordinance that deals with every church, because every church is different. And so that's why sometimes we're here asking for the variances, and that's why sometimes it takes a long time to get to the board to try to deal with the issues so that we can provide the needs of the church and at the same time try to meet the spirit and intent of the ordinance. So that's my little spiel at the beginning of the meeting. What I intend to do tonight is call either 2 or 3 witnesses, depending on how the testimony is going. I do have a representative of the church who's going to present the initial testimony, again, dealing with operations, because operations become very important when we're talking about what we do there, hours and parking and things of that nature. I do have the architect, we do have the architectural plans, and I do have, I'm sorry, 4 witnesses. I do have the site engineer, and I also have my planner. Last month, when we were here, we also had a traffic consultant who was ready to testify, but unfortunately, since it was adjourned from last month to this month, he was unavailable. We did submit a supplemental report that he issued based on the testimony that is going to be presented tonight concerning operations. That should have been provided to you in a subsequent package that you had an opportunity to review. So with that background, I would like to call as my first witness, Vajira. You stand and be sworn.
Okay, Pete, is the other mic working?
It is, I fixed it.
Okay.
Did not build a town for
Sir, do you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I hope you fix other things better than that.
Just give him yours.
Yeah, you broke it.
Motion to adjourn?
Tap it and see if it works.
Okay, sir. Sir, raise your right hand. Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
And can you spell your last name for me?
It's a long one, but G-U-N-A-W-A-R-D as in David, A-N-A.
Okay, thanks.
And your first name is Vajira?
Vajira, V-A-J-I-R-A.
And you can be seated, Mr. Vajira. Vajira, you're here basically in 2 capacities, are you not?
Yes.
Okay. You are a member of the congregation that is the applicant in this transaction, correct?
Yes.
In addition, are you also a licensed engineer in the state of New Jersey?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you give the board the benefit of your educational and professional background?
Brett, I am a licensed professional engineer in the state of New Jersey, New York, and Florida. I have been in front of numerous boards, although not this board, in Mawa, Wall Township, Reddington, Parsippany, Bernards, etc. I have been with Nigerian Associates for over 30 years, and I have an undergraduate and graduate degree in civil and environmental engineering.
It's okay, we'll accept them as is.
And besides your engineering testimony, you're also, we also have another member of the firm here to testify this evening. Is that correct?
Yes.
Can you first of all indicate when the applicant purchased the property?
Just by way of background, I don't know whether I can speak a few things. We are a small Sri Lankan community. We started this Buddhist temple around 2001. We bought a small house in Metuchen, New Jersey. And then we moved to this current 9.2-acre wooded property in 2003. If you look at the sheet number 2, that has a display of the site plan. And then in 2009, we constructed a large Samadhi Buddha statue. That statue is approximately 30 feet tall, and which is the largest in the Western Hemisphere.
Okay. And when you constructed that statue, you obtained the appropriate permits from the township to construct that statue. Is that correct?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And in addition to the statue that you constructed, was there anything else that was done to the property?
Well, subsequent to that statue, we installed 2 smaller statues on either side, much smaller than that. Other than that, there was a meditation trail which we constructed along on either side up to the stream, and you can see that on sheet number 2. Other than that, there was nothing else.
Okay. And also at the present time, on the property in front of the statue is a dwelling. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And how is that dwelling being used today?
We have 3 resident monks who live there, and that's the primary purpose. And then when we have people who want to come to the temple, they offer food to the priests, and that's where that occurs.
Okay. And when you say when they come to the temple, right now there is no building there, they don't worship in the house, is that correct?
Well, there's a small worship room. If a family comes, they use that worship room, and that's it.
Okay, but people do come, obviously, to visit the Buddha that you constructed at the present time.
That is the major attraction right now, yeah.
Now, can you briefly indicate to the board the Buddhist practices and how this facility operates?
Right. Now, one of the things that I want to explain is Buddhist practices are quite different to other religious faiths. And let me start by saying we don't have marriage ceremonies. Marriage is not considered a religious phenomenon in Buddhism. We don't have funeral ceremonies in the temples. They are not considered a Buddhist event. And we don't have a regular day where you go and pray. For instance, if you're a Christian, you go to church on Sunday, Muslims go on Fridays. We don't have a specified day. If a family feels that they want to go for prayer and give alms, meaning food to the priest, they go as a family any day of the week, and they offer that, and they go in front of the statue, meditate for an hour or two, offer flowers, offer incense, spend about an hour with the priest, and they go. That's the typical day-to-day operation. However, we have 2 or 3 events.
With respect to those, if the board were to approve this and you were to construct the building, let's talk about, right now, people come, bring food to the priest, and then worship at the statue.
That's correct.
Okay. Ultimately, if the building were to be built, how would that fit into what you described as your daily operations?
Now, that procedure will continue, but in addition to that, we have 2 or 3 events, big events. For instance, in May, we have an event called Vesak, which is essentially the Buddhist Christmas. That's the birth, enlightenment, and death of the Buddha. That falls on the same day. That is our biggest event. And what we do right now is we have a tent outside, okay? Everybody comes, we have a meditation session in front of the statue. Then we offer food to the monks inside the tent. And after that, all the attendees who come to the temple participate in that food consumption. That's the Buddhist Sri Lankan tradition. However, there is no food cooked in the temple. The priest is not allowed, according to Buddhism, to cook. They are provided food by the people who come there. The only reason we would want to have a kitchen is when people bring food in containers, we want to set it up and warm them in the kitchen so that once the religious practices are over, everybody can partake in that food consumption.
So that's one of your 3 major events, and that's in May every year. And how long, or what time does that event, what's the time span of that event on that day?
Typically, it's either on a Saturday or a Sunday, and we start around 10 o'clock, and it can go on till about 4 or 5 o'clock.
Can you describe to the board the other 2 major events?
Wait a minute, before we go further, how many people do you expect at this event?
Right. Now, our congregation right now within the immediate area is about 50 families, but there are people who come from the tri-state area for this particular event, because we have a temple in Queens, we have a temple in Staten Island, but New Jersey, this is the major.
So what would be your total attendance?
The maximum will be around 150 people.
Okay. Okay. So where would you be able to handle all those cars?
I think I can get to...
I know, I just want to make sure you don't miss anything.
Yeah, right now.
I'll get to that in a few moments. I just want to get through the other holidays to make sure we got them covered and also cover the day-to-day a little bit further. With respect to the other 2 holidays, I believe one of them is in October, is that correct?
That's correct. We have one actually in August. That's the annual event where we celebrate the opening of the statue. So once we opened it in 2009, we've been doing that every year. So we have an event. And then we have another event in October. It's another full moon day, which we come and pray. But none of them are as big as the May event. The May event is the biggest event.
Okay, and again, in response to Mr. Reese's question, the main event, you would anticipate having about 150 people at that event?
That's correct.
Okay.
Any
And,
other events?
and the other events would be less than that, is that correct?
Right.
Less than that, like 140, less than that, like 100?
No. See, the other events, we have a meditation class on Friday nights. We have about 10 or 15 people who come and meditate. Okay.
No, the three, you talked about three.
Oh, for the other two events?
Yeah.
It may be about 125, between 100 and 125 for the other two events.
That was my question.
Okay.
Now, excuse me, can I ask a question? Are they always practicing outdoors in front of the statue, or do they use what do they use the building for?
At the present time, there is no building, and they worship in front of the statue. I will get to what happens when the building is constructed momentarily.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's jump to that. We're proposing to construct a building of 3 stories, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And the second story is basically the worship area.
That's correct.
Can you indicate to the board how the worship will change or be affected by putting the building on the subject property?
Well, right now, the entire worship during those large events occurs outside. And if there's inclement weather, we try to huddle into that existing house or under the tent. When the building is constructed, the major hall will be the key element in that building, the prayer hall. So we will be assembling in that prayer hall and doing the worshiping and all the other religious activities, while we will still meditate in front of the statue outside, weather permitting. But if weather is not permitting, then we will meditate inside the main hall, because we will be having another statue inside, a smaller statue.
So basically, this building is being constructed for 3 major events?
No, I didn't get there yet.
Okay.
Now, you started to indicate, too, that on Friday, all right, when the building is constructed, now people come to the facility and bring food to the monks at the house. When this facility is built, the house is gone. It's going to be demolished. Is that correct?
That's correct.
The monks will be living on the 3rd floor of the building.
That's correct.
Okay. When people then come to meditate and to deliver food, how does the process work with the new building?
All right, what they would do is they would come into the building, meet the priest, talk to the priest, and tell him we have brought food. They will offer the priest food in either the kitchen or in the prayer room, depending on the number of people whom they come. If it's 1 or 2 families, they will offer the alms in the kitchen, but if it's a larger amount, they will offer alms in the prayer room. Then after that, the priest will give us short sermon with a meditation session that will occur in the prayer room. And after that, that's the end of what the family participates. And they might, if the weather is good, they might go out to the statue and meditate in front of the statue also, as I added.
So the building will be used by members of the congregation, or can be used on a daily basis if they come to meditate and bring food to the monks?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
Now, I assume, I think I understand what you're talking about, because in April and May, I was in Asia for 3 weeks and spent a lot of time.
Speak into the microphone.
I spent time in Bangkok, so I saw a number of these temples. So you'll have smaller statues inside the temple also?
We'll have 1 small statue, because I should have clarified that the purpose of the statue is just to reflect. So we will have a smaller statue inside for meditation. That's correct.
Yeah. And what I like to say to the board, what I've observed in these Buddhist temples is that the people just flow on an irregular basis. It's not like a scheduled service at 9 o'clock.
That is correct.
They may flow all day long, and that's the way those temples operate, from what I saw in Bangkok and so forth.
That is correct. For instance, anyone coming to the temple need not have an appointment with the priest or anything like that. The priest is supposed to be there. You come and you offer your alms if you can. You do your meditation both outside and inside. The temple is supposed to be open 24/7. So they do what they have to do and they leave. That's correct.
And they buy and throw different kind of liquids at the temple, at the statue and so forth.
Well, that's a different custom. We don't do that. We just burn incense outside and offer flowers.
Now, you indicated that there are 3 monks that are currently residing in the single-family dwelling that currently exists at the property. Is that correct?
That's correct.
With the new building, if it were to be approved, we are providing residence quarters for those monks within the building. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and how many bedrooms are we providing there?
We are providing 5 bedrooms with the anticipation of visiting monks to be accommodated, 2 visiting monks, so it'll be 5 bedrooms.
Okay.
Okay, so I have a question that I've been holding off on, and we're probably going to go to the engineering side of your witness testimony. But one of the things that disturbs me about this application is that the building is 3 stories high instead of what's permitted as 2.5 stories. And I look at the great set of drawings you've provided tonight, and it looks like really the basement, the storage area, is above ground, and that's why we end up with a 3-story building. Why is the storage area above the ground?
That's a very good question.
Thank you.
And let me put my engineering hat on. You know, one of the first things we did when we started this project, me being an engineer, we did test pits around the entire area for 2 reasons. One is to find work for septic, which we found at the back, so we knew we had a project. And the next was to find the seasonal high groundwater, because we didn't want to have a flow where we'll be pumping groundwater. So the seasonal groundwater is about 2 feet from grade, because we punched holes right throughout the site. So we want to make sure that the bottom of the first floor is about a couple of feet above groundwater. So that's the reason we set it that way. If our groundwater is far below, we would have preferred to bury it, you know, underneath, because, you know,
to bury the basement, right?
Bury the basement, but we just couldn't do it here because of the groundwater.
All right. Good answer.
Now, with respect to the basement,
Let me do a follow-up to that. How did you pick the site in the first place? I mean, did you have a committee go out and look at sites, or somebody?
You mean
How'd you happen to
original
this site?
purchase of the property?
Yeah.
Again, we were using that small place in Metuchen, and then the priest, this high priest who is here, he's a very enterprising priest, he started driving around, and he just found this place and he fell in love with it. It's a nice wooded property, 9 acres, perfect for Buddhist meditation. He said, this is what I want to do. So, in fact, he lucked out. Yeah.
Picked a good town.
Now, Vajira, with respect to the building itself, Mr. Shepard indicated there are 3 stories. The first floor, which would have been the basement had it been underground, what is that going to be used for?
That's primarily going to be used for storage. And of course, you know, when we met with the professionals, everybody wanted to know, why do you need such a large storage area? Again, if you look at your exhibits, we have a tradition in Buddhism, in Sri Lankan Buddhism, that on that Vesak day, albeit the Buddhist Christmas, we have structures, large structures, that we like to display, and it's in your packet and it's in that corner. Those are examples of those displays that are made by specific craftsmen, and we plan to have those made by the craftsmen and stored in the basement. That is one of the reasons. And also, the way the temples operate, the priests are not allowed to receive any money. They don't get an income, so they maintain the property. They get on rider mowers and cut the grass. They do the snow blowing themselves. So all that equipment is going to be stored in the basement. And finally, unfortunately for us, there is no water. So we have to have a 30,000 gallon water tank, and we placed that in the basement. We discussed with the fire marshal. He said that's perfectly okay, and we placed that water tank in the basement. So all those, and a pump house for the fire suppression.
Where does the water come from?
We're going to have a well. We spoke to a well driller. There's adequate water supply in the area, so quantity is not an issue. Initially, we thought we would get public water, but that's not going to happen apparently for a long time, or may never happen. And the engineer told us that, hey, you better, if you want to get approval, you have to make sure that you have your own water, and that's what we did, so.
Okay, so the basement, or first floor, in essence, will be strictly for storage and mechanicals and equipment, is that correct?
That's correct.
And it is not going to be used for occupancy for either meetings or services or anything else?
Absolutely not.
And when Mr. Dominack actually did his initial traffic count, he looks at, which he's required to do, all of the space within the building to determine the parking requirements, and then therefore counted that whole first floor as occupable, if that's a real word, space. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And there is no intent to occupy that first floor other than to use it for the storage of equipment?
That's correct.
And you have no problem if the board imposed a condition that the first floor of that building be used for nothing but storage or mechanical?
That's correct.
And there are some restroom facilities down there, so
that's correct.
Okay.
I have a question regarding the illuminated structures.
Yes.
How long would they be put out on the property? Where would they be put out on the property? And, I mean, some of them are rather large, so, I mean, do they require special permitting from the construction department or for the lights?
We have not looked into that detail, but I have found that in other communities, for instance, the Hindu temples, they build similar structures for their big events. So we will be, if a permit is required, absolutely, we will come out and get permits.
I'm just wondering where on the site they're going to be, where on the site they would be placed, because the site's rather narrow. Would it be placed in back of the building, in front of the building?
It will be in front, between the statue and the front, because that's the only area, like you said, we have.
Right.
And just to clarify for the record, those, and they're called pandals, correct?
Pandals, yeah.
Those pandals come out basically that one day a year, is that correct?
Oh, it's one day?
Yes.
I got the idea it was more than one day.
No, it's just for that one day.
Well, maybe a few days, because we're going to spend all that effort to put it up, it'll be on for about a week.
Day to put them up.
No, it's going to be there for about a week or so.
But they're only used for...
That's correct.
They're only used for the one day.
So
Yeah.
would they be lit the whole time, or just lit on the day that you have your celebration, your event?
Well, typically back home, what we do is they celebrate for months, but we can't do that here, right? Because we had to be working, right? So we will typically do that for that weekend. We will be eliminating that maybe Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday night. That's our thought process. Because the rest of the week, you're going to eliminate for what? There's nobody coming to look at it, right? So, and our main attraction here is not this, but the statue. So that's.
So would you have they really look like they would generate a whole lot of light. Would you have a problem with a condition limiting the number of days that you could have this illuminated?
I don't think we'll have a problem now.
Basically, they'd be on for that weekend, and that's all we...
Okay.
I think you should come up with some number that is acceptable to them too, because if you're going to grant the variance, we should have a condition in there that they're allowed for X amount of days and X amount, or how big they are, whatever they are, just so that it's clear that we don't have any issue. It's really protecting you so that we don't have a resident come and say, well, you got they're too big, so we know exactly what you're allowed.
Well,
Vince,
how
didn't I-
big they
didn't
are
I
should
read-
be limited to what's in the packet.
Oh, is that what they want to do?
One of the
It says
reports said that
one's
there's
30
light
by
spillage.
40, 6
Yeah,
by,
that's something different, though.
6 by 10.
I don't know, these aren't ones that you have right now.
No,
These
those are
just
typicals,
examples.
that's what we plan to have. We don't have any, in fact, we had one when we initially built the statue, but then we had no place to store it, so it got destroyed, so.
I just think it's important for you and for everyone else to know exactly what you're allowed, because I can guarantee you, someone will complain about it, and we want to be able to say, you're 100% in compliance if you get approved, or you're not. It's easy to do that instead of trying to make an interpretation later on that you're allowed to have 2 or 4 or 40 or 100 or whatever there are.
And we asked for 3 weekends in a row, 3 consecutive weekends.
Well, we're talking about the size and the amount of them now.
How many pandals do you envision
The one in the middle is the biggest, that's the major attraction, we'll have one of them. And then on either side, we will have what we call lanterns, large lanterns. So one lantern to the left and one lantern to the right, so 3.
And in the exhibit that we gave to the board, are they typical, so yours will be probably those?
Comparable to these, yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
So if we use the size that's in the exhibit, you're comfortable with that?
That's correct.
Yeah, it's just,
What type of material are your pandals made out of?
Now, these are made out of small strips of wood, and you have the story of Buddha drawn on paper, on waterproof paper, and we paste that onto the wood frame. And then it comes in pieces, and we assemble the whole thing as one piece. I don't know whether I can, that example. Well, if you look closely at the middle pandal, you will see photographs, hand-drawn pictures on the left and right in the middle. It's not very clear, but those are stories of the Buddha. And those circular pictures are all the history of the Buddha's life. That's what we will be portraying.
The reason I asked that because you said they may be out for 3 weekends, and I'm
Right.
wondering what they were made out of because of weather conditions, so forth and so on.
Right.
Thank you.
Now, and again, just to make it clear, I mean, obviously, that large pandal in the middle of the exhibit, that comes in pieces. It doesn't fit into the first floor of the building as one piece, is that correct?
That's correct.
So it is disassembled, it's put into the first floor area and remains there for most of the year and then comes out every year for the event?
That's correct.
Okay. And then you assemble it outside, and how are they lit? Is it an internal power source, or are they tied into the electrical system of the building?
It's tied into the electrical system of the building, yeah.
Thank you.
How about dimensions? What are the dimensions?
It's on this example. One is, the middle one is 40 foot wide.
I missed it, I'm sorry.
So we've dealt with the basement. The first floor, then, basically, you've testified to can be used at any time for meditation by your members of your congregation. The first floor plan, which is part of the plan set, and it was...
Did you just say the first floor? You didn't mean the
No,
first
not the
floor.
first, the second floor. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Healy and I had numerous discussions between basement, first floor, and second floor, and I'm still...
I'm just having deja vu like you wouldn't believe.
Yeah, let's not talk about floor naming.
The main worship floor, okay.
The middle floor.
The middle.
There you go.
It's on page 9. It's called the second floor plan.
Okay, and that basically shows that it has the worship area, and then there are other parts of the building that are used for the dining area, which you testified to, is that correct?
Yes.
And in addition, there are obviously restrooms, and there's a library and a conference room on that floor.
Right.
And then the third floor is residential in nature.
That's correct.
Now, obviously, when you designed the site plan, all right, look, you were aware of the zoning requirements concerning parking and also buffering, is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Can you first of all indicate, our plan doesn't show any buffering against the adjacent properties, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you indicate to the board why you did not provide any buffering? Can you indicate what is along your property lines and why you are asking for the relief from the buffering requirement?
Right. Well, we are providing some buffering, but one of the first things we did during our due diligence was to meet with the neighbors. And we showed them the plans and we said, hey, this is what we are building. Do you have any objections? This is what the buffering is required. We're going to plant trees. And one of the neighbors actually said, I don't want you to plant any trees. I want you to maintain the natural environment as you see in the photographs. And I want to be able to enjoy the statue. I want to be able to see the trees through my side. And I don't want any, another concern was they didn't want any shade on their plantings by planting any trees. So we said fine, and that's exactly what we did on one side. On the southern side, where you see we have a row of trees, that's along the roadway. So we provided trees because we thought that's a reasonable thing to do. But the ordinance requires us to provide a fence. Again, imagine if you look at those photographs and seeing a white fence with all that green and high trees. So that's the reason we thought it's going to create a completely different environment from that entire area if you go to put up fences as opposed to maintaining the natural character. And, you know, these were the residents wanted. These are not residents who live in apartments who change every couple of years. They've been living there all their lives, and they said they want to continue to live there for the rest of their lives. So we thought we would respect that.
And when you provided or proposed just a single row of trees along the drive aisle and no fence, did you speak to the neighbor to the southerly side of you and told her what you were doing?
Right. We spoke to both sides, and we explained to them exactly what we were doing, and they were very comfortable with that.
And they preferred that than complying with the ordinance?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, with respect to the parking, let's go back to the issue of your operation. You indicate that you have 50 families that are members of your congregation. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. I assume that you would hope with the construction of the building that sooner or later your congregation would grow.
Yes, that's the intent.
Okay. And right now, we are proposing 132 parking spaces on the site, of which we are only going to construct 70 and bank 62.
Actually, we are providing 140.
I'm sorry.
And we are constructing 78, and 62 are going to be banked.
Okay. Now, for 362 days out of the year, the parking spaces that we are constructing, are they more than adequate to service the needs of the facility?
Yeah, they're more than adequate, I would say, yes.
Okay. Now, with respect to the 3 special days that you have, and you've had the events at the facility now without any parking whatsoever, is that correct?
That's correct.
And on average, how many vehicles have you seen at the facility when you've had these events since you've had them?
On the peak days, we have about 50 vehicles coming.
Okay. And so that for at least the foreseeable future, the adequacy of the parking to the rear will meet the needs for those 3 peak days also.
That's correct.
And there would not be any need to use the bank parking, correct?
That is correct.
If your congregation should grow to the point where you need additional parking, what is your intent or plan with respect to the additional parking that you would need?
Well, then we would have to construct the bank parking.
Okay. So
Right.
you don't see it happening in the near future, but you have the availability of constructing those spaces in the future
Right.
if you need them.
Is there some reason that if, let's just say, I don't know whether the word successful would be right, but let's use that word. Let's say that you're very successful and your congregation grows to the point where on these major holidays, you have not only used up all of your regular parking, but you had to construct all your banked parking, and you filled it up. Is there any other space on the property where you could build yet additional parking?
Not on the property because it's
So
all
wetlands?
concerned by wetlands.
Okay, all right.
What we are doing now is on those major events. Right now, we have an understanding with another temple about a couple of miles called the Durga Temple, and we do a shuttle service with them.
Okay.
And, that's how.
The reality, Mr. Shepherd, is quite frankly, the parking spaces in the front, the 62 banked parking spaces, it really makes no sense to build them for 3 days a year. If the congregation grows, it's probably more beneficial to keep that area green and to shuttle people from another site to this site rather than to build those spaces. We have the capability to do it. We would do it if it's necessary. But in all likelihood, in discussing this matter with the members of the congregation, their first alternative would be to find off-site parking and just bring the people in for
Yeah,
2
okay,
days.
that's fine. I was just curious.
Yeah.
The end question was, is there any possibility of additional parking? And he answered that question
Right.
very quickly and just said, nope, it's all wetlands.
Yeah.
So I get that.
But we've also have contingency plans if there is need for, as other religious facilities in this town do for special events, they do arrange for off-site parking if it becomes necessary.
Okay.
And I'd like to see that also if this is approved as a condition of the approval.
You would like to see what?
A shuttle, some kind of contingency parking planning. In the event.
In the event that it is needed, yeah.
In the event, obviously, in the event that
I mean,
it's
we don't have to
needed.
give you a whole contract or lease agreement with a temple now if we don't need it for 20 years from now.
No, but
Okay.
a condition that in the event that it's needed, that there be a contingency off-site parking.
That's perfectly acceptable.
And just one minor clarification, the parking count that we use is 136 because our engineer and our police department have determined that the 2 spaces at the west end of the building near the one entrance are unsafe in their opinion. So that's the number that we have used.
Let me deal with that.
I'm just
Yeah.
telling you, from a staff perspective, the engineer and the police, and they've determined that they do not believe that those, the board can make whatever determination they want, but that's what the staff has determined, that those 2
So that brings
spaces.
it, that would bring it to 138, if that's the case,
No,
right?
136. There are 138 proposed. If you
No, we have 140 proposed. When you take the 2 out, it'll be
They
138.
have 78 proposed, 62 banked.
All right.
For 140, take away 2, it's 138.
Right.
Okay.
Real quick, Mr. Lanford, 2 quick questions. Just to clarify, the banked parking area that's in the front, if you don't improve it, that's going, right now, there's some gravel, that's going to become a grassed area?
Right, we have a plan, I think.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify.
Yeah, it's going to be grass.
Be grass, and that's the area of the site where the
Pandos, yes, that's
would be
correct.
displayed, okay.
So it may-
And in your discussions with your neighbors, did you discuss or tell them the possibility that that could be a parking lot at some point in the future?
Yes, we did.
Okay. And did you discuss with them the fact that there would be lighting along the parking lot and along the driveway, 15-foot high lighting?
We showed them, well, did we discuss the specific lighting? I don't recall, but we told them it will be lit. As to the heights and the details, I don't think I discussed with them.
Okay.
A couple other things before we move on to the next witness. Dealing with a couple of the issues that were raised by Mr. Healy. Obviously, the ordinance requires that the parking lot and the driveway to the building to the rear be illuminated. As a practical matter, given the way the facility operates or will operate in the future, how often do you see the need for either the driveway to be illuminated or the parking lot to be illuminated?
Only during the major events.
Okay. So nothing really goes on in the evening at the facility that would require you to light the parking lot or to light the drive aisles?
No.
Okay. Now, there was also the discussion of the 2 parking spaces that were raised by Mr. Dominic. If we go to, let me find a sheet. On sheet, I I guess they can.
There's a blow up in one of the figures. Show you. Here on sheet number 6, the figure on the top left.
All right, you are proposing to construct 2 parking spaces which are located at either side of the stairway going up to the second floor.
That's correct.
Okay. And what are those parking spaces for?
Those 2 parking spaces are primarily for the clergy, so that when they come in, even on a rainy day, they can drive in there and park there.
And the staff indicated that you would like, they would like those spaces to be eliminated. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and it's your preference to keep them there, and they are only to be used for clergy parking. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And if there are major events that take place which require people to come to the facility, the clergy are already there, and the vehicles, that if they have vehicles, would be in those parking spaces. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So there is not an issue of those parking spaces having to, or cars moving in and out of those parking spaces, because if you have the major event, the monks are going nowhere.
That's
Is that correct?
That's correct.
And it would be a convenience for the monks to have those parking spaces adjacent to the building.
That's correct. And yeah.
And do you have any objection to appropriately signing those, that they are only to be used for parking for the members of the clergy or the monks?
No, not at all.
Do you have handicap
How,
set up?
how do we
Handicap
enforce
parking?
something like that?
What?
How does something like that get enforced?
Well, that's staff's concern.
Yeah.
They don't think that, not my staff, I'm talking about the police and engineering, that's their major concern, is that in their mind, they're not safe, and controlling that is next to impossible, and they're concerned that for everyone's safety there. So, I mean, that's for the board to determine, but that's their concern.
I mean, the reality is the monks live there, that's where they park, and those cars are going to be there most of the time. It's our preference.
Do you have handicap in the front, Peter?
There are handicap parking spaces.
Yeah, you can see 3 on that same figure. There are 3 on
As
on
you're
the top.
looking at the building from the rear of the building on the left side, and they're in the appropriate location, there are handicap parking spaces.
Pete, I guess I don't see where the 2 parking spaces are that are at issue.
Let me see if we can get it on the...
Right next to the, yeah, exactly. Right here, and right here. Shows up on here a little better.
Oh, those are parking spaces?
Yes. It's just space.
I didn't recognize it as such. Okay. Thank you.
Jerry, I think she has it. You have it now where they are?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I have no further questions of this witness.
One of the questions I have is a little different, and I'm concerned if I'm missing something, or if we're not asking the right questions. It doesn't seem like this is generating an awful lot of use daily as a facility.
Right.
People entering and leaving. And that concerns me unusually, because every time I drive by this place, it's got cars packed all over the place. And maybe that's because it's not organized and it's all in the front yard and everything, but it just seems like it's getting a lot more use than what is coming out of here in testimony. For instance, is there an education program, or, where do children learn about this religion? Is there are there other programs that are going on here that we just haven't asked the right question, or is that really the limit?
No, I can
of
answer
use?
that. I think I mentioned that there is a meditation group on Friday nights, and 2 Sundays a week, I'm sorry,
2 Sundays a week.
A month?
Sorry, Vince, you
I'd
picked
get
that
an
up,
extra
huh?
day off that way.
I'm sorry. 2 Sundays a month, there is a Sunday school where we have about 10 to 15 kids who come into the existing temple right now, and then the monk teaches them Buddhism. Yep.
Well, do you anticipate that it will be more than 10 or 15 kids when the building is constructed?
We hope so, that more and more families.
Like 30 kids, 40 kids, 50 kids?
I mean, the number's important, and the timeframes are important, because if they're going to grant the variance, they're going to grant it with specific conditions and timeframes, so they know the use of the property at all days of the week, times, and everything else, so.
Well, the issue really is to what extent this is going to impact the traffic and the neighbors, and what the extent of the use.
Well, let me, since Mr. Ray is not here this evening, but I mean, if you looked at the traffic report, the supplemental report especially that he issued, and also heard the testimony, basically any of the activities that take place here are in off-peak hours. They're either Friday nights, off-peak, Saturday, or Sunday. And his report clearly indicates that whether you have, 20 or 30 or 40 kids, it's not going to have an impact, or the vehicles bringing the kids, because the kids are obviously not driving, but the parents bringing the kids would not have any impact on the traffic on Route 27 in that area during those times. So that was part of Mr. Ray's report. Again, he could not be here. If the board wanted to hear from him, I mean, obviously we can continue this, and I can have him here at the next meeting to proffer that testimony. The children, as Vajira indicated, there would take, the only thing that would take place would be on Sundays or Friday evenings. And if the board were to want to impose those conditions, that's the only time that those things are taking
And
place.
those activities would take place inside the building?
Everything will be inside the
Yeah.
building, yes.
And again, Ms. Grauman, I mean, if people are there, they could still go out to the statue to meditate or do
Which
other
they will
things,
do,
right?
yes.
But as far as educational purposes, they're in the building.
Does the facility have a long-term growth projection? And what might it be at certain intervals? Is it possible to outgrow the site?
Well, the only example we have is we have a similar facility in Queens, New York, about the same size, and it was completed, it took 10 years to build, and right now it is still about 75% capacity. So, and again, it's for the same 3 days that hall gets occupied. The rest of the time, it's the routine families coming and giving food to the monks, and no other. That's why I can survive in Queens, New York, right? So
Maybe the better question is, what do you project as the capacity of this facility? You said the other one is about 75% capacity.
right.
What would you say the capacity of this facility is going to be?
You mean at ultimate build out, or?
In the best scenario and whatever?
Well, hopefully in about 10 years, that's our plan. That's our expectation, that we will hit capacity. But
That
base
capacity would be,
399, we designed this parking and everything, the hall, to accommodate 399 devotees in the main hall.
And-
So, and that's for ultimate growth. I mean, it's 25 years is what we feel, but you ask what we would hope for. We'd hope for it to reach that in 10 years, but
And again, if you take the 399 as people and assume you look at the parking ratios where you usually, if there were seating in there, it would be one parking spot for every 3 seats. And if you work the numbers backwards, you're back down to where we are with respect to the parking requirements and everything else.
yeah, that's how we came with the 140 for ultimate build-out. That parking calculation is for ultimate build-out.
What's the average length of time someone comes to meditate? An hour, 2 hours?
meditate about an hour, I would say. That is somebody who does not go into the temple and discuss with the priest. But if there's a discussion, if they bring food, then it gets extended for another couple of hours.
That's just somebody who comes
There are people who just drive into the statue, meditate for an hour and leave.
and leave, yeah.
So that's about an hour.
Any other questions? I guess you ready for the next witness, right?
I'm ready. Are you ready? Ray?
People outside who need to ask him questions.
I have a question, maybe that you can answer. How tall is the building going to be at the peak?
I think it's on page number 4. There's a profile, the bottom figure is a profile, and it shows at the peak, it's 49 feet.
All right.
And 35 feet to the bottom of the roof. Now, this roof design we picked because this is based on the most sacred temple in Sri Lanka for us. So we are trying, the architects have developed that design so that it resembles a true Sri Lankan Buddhist temple.
Mm-hmm. And Mr. Healy, can you tell me what is the height of a building that would fit within the zoning requirements of that 2.5 stories?
Well, it's a place of worship, they're allowed to go up to 50 feet.
Okay.
But they do need a height variance because they're limited to 2.5 stories and they have 3.
Okay,
The
so
number of stories, not the height in feet.
so it's not the height of the building, but the fact that the basement is above ground that causes
It's
the
a
need.
three-story, it's a
Right, okay.
full 3-story building.
Okay, good, I get it.
Okay, before we move on, I'll open to the public. Is there anyone who would like to ask this witness any questions concerning his testimony? Okay, we'll close now.
Peter, did you want to mark anything? You haven't marked anything.
Actually, all of the exhibit, I should go through them. I did mark them all, and they're all in your set, but I guess it would be easier for me to tell you what I marked, so that,
Okay.
I marked as A1, actually, give me the sheet for that, yeah, so I can correlate it to. I marked as A1 basically sheet 2 of the package that you have, which is the site and photo location. I marked as A2 the sheet 3, which is, yeah, it's 3. Sheet number 3, which is the grading plan, which shows in color the building and is part of the site. I marked as A4 the sheet that you have, which is sheet 6, which is the geometric bank parking and curb plan. And then I marked as A3 sheet number 7 of the package that you have, which is the tree removal and landscape plan. And all of these the engineer will be referring to. I marked as A5 the photographs of the, which are part of your package, both the photographs of the of the trees that currently exist on the property, the photograph of the Buddha, and the photographs of the Pandal. I marked as A6, that's A7. A6 is... I marked A6 as the floor plans of the building, which are sheet number 9 of the set that you have. And I've marked as A7 the architecturals of the building, which are sheet number 8 of the set that you have. Okay, I'm going to mark A9, which is sheet 4 of the plan, which Vajira testified to. I did not mark it last month. And then A10 I'm going to mark, which is sheet number 10, which is just the third floor plan of the building, which I did not mark. So basically, all of the exhibits that I've marked are in the package that you have, Mr. Bradshaw.
All right.
I tried to cover them all.
Okay.
Mr. Papa, can you be sworn, please?
Okay, sir, if you raise your right hand for me. Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, you're going to need to use the microphone.
Yes, I do.
Okay, and spell your last name for me.
P-A-P-A. My
Thanks.
name is Raymond Papa.
Mr. Papa, what is your occupation?
I'm a civil engineer. I've been employed by Nigerian Associates for 28 years. I have a degree in engineering from the University of Delaware. I've been a PE in New Jersey since 1988. I've spent most of my time at Nigerian doing site plan design and applications.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Papa, you are the one who, along with Vigera, prepared the site plan, which is the subject of this application.
That's correct.
And the version that the board is looking at this evening is probably, what, the third, fourth, or fifth version of the site plan that's been submitted to the township?
That's correct.
Okay. Can you indicate, first of all, and very briefly, because I think the board, based on some of the testimony of Vigera, and I'm sure most of them have visited the site, can you indicate what the existing conditions are on the subject property?
The site's located along Route 27. Right now, there's an entrance on the northern side and a gravel parking area just behind the house where all of the current parking takes place. We're proposing an entrance on the south side. We have notes on the plan that says once that entryway is built and the parking is built, the gravel and the other entrance will be torn up and lawns will be planted. When the CO is issued for the new temple, we'll demolish the old house. Predominantly, the entire back of the site is wooded. We're showing walking paths in the rear of the property. I have a note on the plan that it's to be field located to avoid trees. We're not going to go in there and cut down trees to build a walking path. So site plan basically is a driveway coming in on the south side of the project, parking to the rear of the building, and parking parallel along the south side of the entrance, and that'll be the 72 built parking spaces. The banked parking would go in this area in front of the temple.
Is that where the house used to, sorry, is that where the house used to be? Or the house will have been removed from?
The house and the current gravel parking area.
Okay.
The site slopes away from Route 27, so we're not running any stormwater out to 27. Everything's going to slope to the rear. We have a underground detention basin under the parking lot because of site constraints with wetlands and things like that. The detention basin is going to meet all DEP standards for water attenuation and water quality. It was designed counting the impervious cover for the bank parking. So until the bank parking is built, we'll have a very conservative stormwater system. And there'll be pipe stubs left from the inlets up into the bank parking, so it's minimal work to go in there and build that. There will be a septic system. This is where we have the perk behind the parking lot. Right now, there's a current septic system at the front of the site that'll be abandoned once we open the temple. We have a row of lights along the southern side of the entry drive. We analyzed the lighting with a computer model, so there are some points where over the property line it shows 0.1 foot candles, but the model didn't take into account the row of trees that we have along there. So we're very close to what the town requires, and we're willing to make further adjustments. We intend to put a well somewhere in this corner of the parking area, and as Vajir testified, there'll be a fire suppression system built into the bottom floor of the temple. We didn't do a detailed design yet. We wanted to see if we got approvals from the zoning board before we, pay experts to design a fire suppression system, but all that will be submitted to the town, prior to final. We will need permits from the DEP, need a general permit. Right past the back of the building is a stream. That stream will come with a 100-foot DNR canal buffer from the banks. There are wetlands along that corridor. There's also wetlands along the northern side of the site. We'll need permits from the DEP for buffer averaging, discharging stormwater to the stream. The footbridge across the stream will require DEP permits. The entire stormwater system will be reviewed by the NJDEP as well as Somerset County SCS.
Can I interrupt you in that regard? When I take a look at the engineer's report, which is dated May 29th, so it's entirely possible that things have been changed since then, but that's the most recent report we have. There are a number of items with respect to stormwater that jumped out at me as being not satisfied.
It's my opinion he's interpreting DEP rules incorrectly. We have had meetings with the DEP, showed them the equipment we plan to use and how we plan to meet their standards, and they had no problem. So if it could be conditional that we get the DEP's approval for our stormwater system, we would have the town's approval.
Well, you need our approval, too.
Well,
I mean, it's not just DEP.
your regulations are based on the DEP regulations.
I'm just telling you that it's not just okay to get the DEP's permit, you need our approval.
Well,
I mean, you can argue whether you believe something's applicable, but you need our approval and our sign-off from our engineer. That's just the way
we need to comply with your regulations.
That is correct.
Okay.
Yes,
And,
that's what I'm saying.
and if your regulations are the same as the DEP's regulations, and if the DEP issues an approval, I would assume that the township engineer would then have to issue an approval.
I wouldn't assume that, no, because they look at different things.
No, they don't.
That would be incorrect. I'm just-
As far as the issue of stormwater management,
The rules are the same, but they look at certain things and certain things they don't look at. That's just the way it is. We're saying the same thing, Pete. We're saying semantics. They have to meet all the regulations they have to meet.
we don't dispute
Yes.
that we have to meet the
Right.
township ordinances and the
Yes.
DEP requirements.
Yep.
Correct?
Correct.
We don't disagree with that. Did I confuse you now, or did I?
You bet. No, the difficulty I have is what you're saying essentially is Mr. Hout has misinterpreted what compliance is.
I'm not sure I'm saying that.
Well, somebody.
And again, I am not the engineer, but it is my understanding that the township's regulations are based on the DEP regulations.
And I'll accept that.
Okay, and then therefore, if we comply with one, we should comply with the other, and to the extent that there's a request above and beyond what the DEP may require, we may then reserve the right to object, because we question as to whether this township can require us to do something above and beyond what the DEP requires concerning stormwater management.
I guess since stormwater management is pretty crucial, that I would want to at least see some reconciliation with Mr. Howard.
We, believe me, it's our intent to reconcile everything. I'm not saying we can't or won't. I just, again,
I mean, it just jumped out at me in this report. And
Typically, what you do is you make a requirement, and if, as Mr. Lanford pointed out, is if there's something in the report that there's a misinterpretation either on their part or our part, it'll be rectified at some point.
That's all I want to know.
And we don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
Fine.
It's always been worked out. I don't think we've ever had an issue that
Fine, I'm not.
maybe they
trying to
weren't
make
happy or we
trouble,
weren't
just-
happy, but it was always worked out.
Okay.
Almost always. Okay. Let's move forward.
And
Just let me just backtrack. You mentioned a bunch of permits that we have to obtain from the DEP before we start this project. Is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay, and all of those permits, in your opinion, are all routine, ordinary permits, and they're all obtainable? We're not looking to get permits for something that's
That's correct.
out there. These are standard permits. Is that correct?
We've had meetings and discussed it with DEP members.
Okay. Now, with respect to the walking trail that you testified to, that walking trail, you indicated there's a stream, we need a permit to cross the stream. On the other side of the stream, are there wetlands where that walking trail is, or is that walking trail going to be outside of the wetlands?
You have to cross the stream corridor, which has wetlands. Once you get outside the corridor, we won't disturb wetlands.
Okay, just so the record's clear. So the only wetlands for that walking trail are within that stream corridor. You'll need a permit for that, and the rest of the walking trail will be outside of the wetlands.
Yes.
Okay.
Oh, wait. Oh, excuse me. There are some wetlands in this area, and we'll be applying for a permit to put the walking trail through there.
And obviously, if we don't get those permits, the walking trail either will be relocated or eliminated.
That's correct.
Now, you indicated that the lighting, there's lighting along the entry drive, and there's also lighting in the parking lot. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and do you have a problem putting a note on the plan that none of that lighting will be, neither the parking lot nor the driveway will be illuminated except when activities take place at the facility?
But if it's required.
Okay. So you're not going to have the parking lot lights going on every night of the week when nothing's going on, correct? Now, you indicated that the stormwater management system is under the parking lot to the rear of the property.
That's correct.
Okay. And the fire suppression system is within the building.
That's correct.
Okay. And obviously, as you indicated, that still has to be finalized, and that would be a condition of the approval.
Yes.
Okay. Now, talk about what we have done with respect to landscaping, both around the building and also landscaping along the drive aisle, and where we are putting in some buffering to our neighbors and where we're not.
We have a row of evergreens on 10-foot centers along the parking aisle. They're staggered back and forth 3 to 4 feet.
What kind?
I had our landscape architect pick species that he thought were deer resistant.
Good.
Let me get the plan. We have Douglas fir, Colorado spruce, white spruce, and Norway spruce.
Good.
And this is acceptable to the neighbors?
Yes.
Here's the concern that I have, is that, at least in my opinion, we're relying upon, the neighbor's not here. We're relying upon their word that the neighbor's okay. The requirement is, they're proposing 1 row of evergreens. The requirement is either 2 rows and a fence, or 3 rows. So my concern is the board approves this. As staff, the neighbor comes after this thing is built and says, why don't they have the required buffer? We're saying,
Mr. Healy, the neighbor is here, and
okay,
if you
well,
want to hear from...
that would be wonderful. I don't want to hear from this gentleman 2 years from now that we didn't protect his property. So I would love to hear from that gentleman.
The neighbor is here, and I think he also will speak for the neighbor on the other side who could not make it, but
That would be
they are here.
Okay. I'd love to hear from you, sir.
Okay. Continue on what other landscaping we are proposing.
Along the northern side, we're putting in, some trees, red maples, some hollies, magnolias. In the front, we have some plantings that are going to be low plantings, like grasses, smaller shrubs. We don't want to hide the view of the Buddha from Route 27 when, with a big landscaping screen.
Now, are there any trees that need to be removed in order to do this project?
I follow the Township's ordinance for calculating, doing the tree removal, and my calculations came up that we will have a deficit of 257 trees.
Okay.
On the tree replacement ordinance.
And under the tree replacement ordinance, we're required to pay for the deficit?
That's correct.
Okay, and that would be a condition of the approval also?
Yes.
Okay. Now, in addition, you indicated, obviously, we need the approval of this board for site plan approval. We need the DEP permits that you mentioned. Also, we have to get a DOT permit, do we not?
Yes, we're moving the driveway, we'll need a DOT permit.
Okay, and that would be a condition of approval should the board grant this application. Have you had an opportunity to review the staff reports that were generated in conjunction with this application? And in particular, the report that has been previously referred to by Ms. Grauman, the May 29th, 2013 report from Mr. Hauk to the Zoning Board of Adjustment?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and in reviewing the report, quite frankly, most of the issues we've already complied with because, as I've indicated earlier, this is about the third or fourth revision to the set of plans. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, now with respect to the open comments, can we comply with all of the open comments? Are there any items that need to be discussed with respect to that we can't comply with? And obviously, we've talked about the stormwater management, and we will agree to provide some of the additional information and hopefully resolve that issue. Are there any other issues that need to be discussed that you do not think can be complied with?
No, we can comply.
Good.
We have Patty's report, Health Department.
Hang on, I'm trying to get from Mr. Healy.
Oh, okay. I thought you said that you took care of it.
I want to just
Marker.
confirm that we covered all of Mr. Healy's engineering comments.
He'll point out if you didn't.
Yeah, I think you've addressed all of it. I mean, I think there may be some follow-up questions, but
Okay.
I think,
But generally,
I think
all
we can
Mr.
move on from
Healy's
there.
comments we can address and comply with if we haven't addressed them on the record. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And we need to provide the calculations. Obviously, the Water Department's report we can comply with, which is the domestic and fire and water requirements.
Yes, we can.
Okay. He also mentioned the recycling bin, and then we didn't touch on this. How is the trash being handled in this matter?
I believe the architecture is going to show a garage-type door under the steps in the front, and we figure to handle everything with roll-out containers that'll be stored on the bottom floor.
So they'll be stored within the building and then taken out to the curb or picked up on site?
Yes.
Okay. The Health Department report, it was dated May 16, 2013, indicates that we do need a new permeability test.
We'll do a new permeability test.
Correct, so we'll comply with that. Yeah. And concerning the report, there's a question as to whether a TWA permit is necessary or whether we can get a general permit for the septic system. Is that correct?
Vaj is better suited to answer that.
Yeah, that is something we have to discuss with the DEP because everything is based on the flow, how much of flow is discharged into the septic tank. But on a use like this, we have designed it for 390, the septic tank has been designed for full occupancy of 399 attendees plus the five bedrooms. Now,
all right, and before you go further, with respect to that number, if the board were to impose a condition that the maximum occupancy of the facility at any given time be 399 people plus the use of the 5 bedrooms for the monks, would you be acceptable to that condition, and would you abide by that condition?
Yes.
Okay. And based on that condition, then, we will have discussions with Ms. Elliott and also the DEP concerning whether a TWA permit is or is not necessary. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And we will resolve that issue between Ms. Elliott and or the DEP.
That's correct.
Thank you. I have no further questions of this witness.
Any board questions?
What do you need the new permeability test for?
The old one expired. So
Well,
it's good for 2 years.
It's good for 2 years as per the township requirements, but DEP does not have a 2-year requirement. So as far as DEP is concerned, these permeability tests are still valid. So we will work with Patty and the DEP to resolve that, so.
So the first one was satisfactory?
Oh,
You don't
yeah.
expect it to change any?
No, because permeability is the same soil. If you don't change the soils and the land use has not changed,
Right.
it should work.
You're moving the septic from the front of the property back closer to the stream. Does that have any effect?
No, because the septic, you know how the septic design works, all the leachate from the septic field goes down to the groundwater,
Yeah.
not laterally to the surface water. So that's why they allow you. And of course, there is a setback from the stream for the septic
Yeah.
field, and we are meeting that.
Okay, any other questions? We'll open to the public. Is there anyone who'd like to ask a question? Come on up here.
We're going to have to give him the extra mic.
I don't think he's going to walk through comment. I think he's going to make a comment. I was going to, and I figured it's a meeting.
My name is George Keene. I live at 4291 Highway 27, the adjacent property to the proposed, or the present Vihara and the proposed new temple.
South or north? South of the, excuse me,
North.
right here. South or north of the?
North.
North, okay.
Yes. What I'm doing is I'm reading a letter that my wife was to make this statement presentation, but she was released from Robert Wood this afternoon, so here I am. But my wife and I reside at 4291 Route 27, which is adjacent to the Buddhist Vihara property on the north side. As not just neighbors, but friends of the Vihara and the congregation, we believe that an adequate facility is needed to conduct religious
I hate to
activities.
interrupt you. We're going to need to swear you in for this. This is generally a questioning period based on the testimony that the witness gave, but there's so few public here today, we can take both at the same time, but we
Okay.
need to have you.
Okay, sir, just raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay. We know your name and your
Okay,
address, so
yeah.
you're good to go.
Where was I here? Okay. We believe that, they need a facility to conduct their religious activity, which the current single-family home does not provide. My wife, as an active participant in many of the events of the Vihara, can also personally attest to the need for additional space. We have reviewed the plans for the project and believe they will provide an adequate, appropriate facility to address these needs. Thus, we are wholly in support of the project and request the board to approve the application. Relative to the issue of buffers between our property and the Vihara, we would prefer that there be no trees or any other barrier on the property line. We have purposely landscaped the back yard to complement the park-like setting next door, and thus the barrier would destroy that continuity and character of the properties. Furthermore, as an avid gardener, my wife that is, we wouldn't appreciate the increase in shade that the barrier would cause. Finally, no barrier would be able to, we would be able to enjoy, finally, with no barrier, we would be able to enjoy the proposed meditation garden that will be adjacent to the front of our property. Thus, we request that the board waive the requirement for the barrier. As an additional note, Carol, my wife, met several times with Kathleen Davidson of 4299 Route 27, who is the next-door neighbor on the south side. She has also reviewed the project plans and expressed her support for the proposals and application. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Anybody else wish to?
Can I ask a question? When you say she's expressed her support with respect to the buffering on her side, is she in agreement with what is being proposed? I want to know that explicitly on the record.
I believe that Mr. Lanford has a copy of a letter from Mrs. Davidson to that effect.
Unfortunately, the letter is not admissible, but I do have a letter indicating that she's reviewed the plans and they are acceptable as proposed. I mean, if
I know it's not admissible, but maybe you could provide it anyway.
It is in my file. I don't know if I can dig it up this evening, but if you want me to provide it, so as part of the board's or the township's file, I'll be happy to provide it. But she did.
I think that should be.
I've not only received a letter from her, I've had numerous telephone conversations with her.
But on the lighter side, just as Sarah Palin can see Russia from her window, I can see or we can see and thoroughly enjoy a view of the Buddha statue from our back window. Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
Just on the other side, Dolores Stills, do they own that property or rent?
Though I believe they rent it, and I went to contact Dr. Still several weeks ago and was
He's
disappointed to find out that he had passed away, I think, maybe in November.
Yeah.
That, no, but it's a rental property.
It's a rental property
Yeah.
now. Well, would you say that the value of your property is enhanced, obviously, from what you've said, but would that be true for any of the surrounding properties?
I think I would venture to say that were I to sell my property adjacent to the Buddhist Vihara, that I could have a Sri Lankan resident snap up that property in a heartbeat.
Great.
Anybody else wish to speak? And we'll close that part of the hearing. The only thing I think neighbors need to also keep in mind, and you've probably approached them with that, is you're going to do significant site clearing for this project, correct?
Correct.
So when you think in terms of the buffer, their view is going to change significantly because of the site excavation and the clearing. So I don't know if maybe not applying the buffer standard is the wise thing to do or not, even though when you're thinking of the views that you see now, you see the whole site as it exists. It's not going to be like that when you clear the site. It's going to look different, and without a buffer, I don't know.
Mr. Thomas, if I may make a suggestion. I mean, obviously, we have a requirement that we have to pay the township for 256 trees that we are removing from the site. If once the building is up, it appears from the neighbor's perspective that we need to supplement, to plant some additional trees, we can do it. We have the ability to do it, and we would supply less of a fund to the town. It's not that we don't want to do it. We're not looking to get away with something. We're trying to really meet their needs as well as ours. And if the board wanted us to revisit with the neighbors and maybe supplement with some additional trees at the end of the day, if they felt that that was appropriate, I don't think we have a problem doing that.
I'm not inferring that you're trying to get away with anything on behalf of your client. I'm just proposing that this site is going to look significantly different than what they're looking at now. And they may want to reconsider buffering. I think the offer is fine, and, everybody involved should be made aware of that option when the time comes.
And Mr. Chairman, if I could speak to that. I found the comments of the neighbor pretty compelling. I think we've all been in this room several times over the last few years with neighbors. It's the same issue that pops up almost every single application about buffering because you're having a non-commercial, a non-residential use, sometimes in people's backyards, and the whole issue is, what am I going to see? You're ruining my property. I think, hearing the neighbor's testimony and then looking at the location of his house in relation to this plan, I actually think that the neighbor's actually going to have an improved view. And the reason for that is, right now they're looking at a house, and the house is in okay shape, and then a gravel parking lot. In the proposed condition, And the house, because the house is actually, his house, and the neighbor to the north is actually kind of in front of the, it's in front of the statue, it's closer to 27, is that correct, sir? So they're actually going to be looking at, instead of a gravel parking lot, a grass area now with the Buddha statue in the middle of it. I think he had mentioned a park-like setting.
Pardon?
And I think that's probably a pretty accurate description of what they're going to see. With, the disturbance is going to be more in the back, and that's where they do have trees that are going to remain. So, even in my report, I beat them up pretty hard. Now that I'm hearing the neighbor's testimony and then, looking at the location of his house and the plan, I think there is some legitimate reasons to vary that requirement.
If everybody's happy, that's fine, as long as the park-like setting stays. Just keep in mind, that's where the bank parking spaces are. So
Well,
that view could change.
That might be something for the board to consider, and perhaps the neighbor wants to comment on that in case that park-like setting goes away, which would be a parking lot there with lights, in that case, would he want the compliant buffer, with a fence and trees? Because then it would no longer be a park-like setting, it would be a parking lot. With that said, we've had bank parking lots in dozens of places of worship, warehouses, retail. We've never compelled somebody to improve it. But nonetheless, the possibility exists.
Let's move on, as long as everybody's happy. I'm not going to...
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to call us...
1 second. Yes? Might as well, you're the only person, and the only public here, so...
No, in regard to the buffer, I would say that it's not a problem. We've been neighbors of the Vihara for 5-6 years now, that perhaps more. And all the testimony to the level of traffic and so forth is true, that they have, one major holiday and assembly and two minor ones. My wife goes to the meditation, it's never more than a dozen cars. And both my wife and I were on the initial planning committees for this, and I welcome it that the landscape architect who laid out the front, they did a marvelous job. So that this is, as one of you mentioned, is an enhancement, not a detraction. And if we needed a buffer, that I would select a hedge and, be willing to do it myself. There's no need to, assign responsibility to the Vihara for this.
So in the very unlikely scenario where they have to put a parking lot there,
Yeah.
you would still be fine with what they're proposing?
Yeah, no, I've seen the drawings with that, all the things that I personally have copies of, most of, what you have here as exhibits, I would say. So it's, there's no problem at all.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
I'd like to call the architect very briefly so we can just get what the building is going to look like on the record and the materials to be used. Since she was here last month, I think she's got to earn her keep.
Okay, if you raise your right hand, you solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
The microphone.
I do.
Okay, state your name for the record.
My name is Sayuja Malhotra.
Can you spell your last name for the record, please?
Malhotra.
Okay. I did.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. Ms. Malhotra, you're a licensed architect in the state of New Jersey.
I am.
And where's your office located?
In New Jersey,
Okay.
in Homedale, New Jersey.
Okay, and how long have you been licensed?
About 25 years.
Okay, and you prepared the architectural plans for the building?
I did.
Okay, and again, we've heard a lot of testimony concerning the interior of the building.
It's okay, you can move beyond.
Okay, it's a 3-story building. It is under the 50-foot height requirement of the zone, is that correct?
Yes, it is.
Okay, can you indicate to the board how big the building is, describe the building, the colors, the materials, just so the board has a flavor of what the building will look like? And I did pre-mark an exhibit, if it helps you in making your presentation, and that pre-marked exhibit is Exhibit A7.
We've been through the first floor, which is the storage area, and for the water tank, the storage of these pandals. The first floor is mostly the meditation area and a kitchen for the warming of food, which is always provided by the congregation. They don't cook, the Buddhist priests don't cook in the facility. And the front offices is just really space for, things like membership notification being sent out when the families need to be told, and basic things like paying the taxes, paying the, those type of, an office is required for that, and then a library with materials if anybody wants to know more about the Buddhist religion, more about Buddhist information. The third floor is the residential area, which is really only on the front side, as the back side, which the prayer rooms is a two-story, sort of a higher ceiling space. So the residential area is only on the front area on the top part here, which you'll see on the floor plan.
So the entire building is not a three-story building, only part of the building is
Exactly.
3 stories?
Exactly.
Okay.
And then when you're speaking also about it being the height of the building, I'd just like to point out that it's 400 feet back from the front street. You can see that on the site plan. So the height is not an imposing height when you're driving by. It is set back quite far. This is a 1,900-foot long site, so it is set back a little bit from the front street. The building, as Vajira had mentioned, is designed to resemble a very prominent, famous Sri Lankan temple, just to give the worshippers a feeling, a sense of what they have in their history. And the statue, which was the first thing that's built, from the windows, much of the area in the front of the building, you should hopefully be able to see the Buddhist statue, which is really supposed to be the main part of the design. Terracotta roof structure, the doors would be imported from Sri Lanka. We're really trying to get a sense of what the temple that's in Sri Lanka looks like. If there's any particular questions?
The Buddha is still going to be facing toward the street, is it not?
Yes,
Not
the
gonna
Buddha
be
is going to
flipped
stay
around?
where
Right,
it is, yeah.
okay.
There will be a smaller Buddha within this two-story meditation space on the
Yeah.
inside, a smaller one.
The view from the street will be the Buddha with that in the background.
Yes,
How tall is the Buddha?
30 feet. Correct.
30, and the building's 39.
Yes.
Excuse me,
40.
49. So the Buddha is kind of set in the background of the...
Yes, and the Buddha is actually a little bit to the north.
Little to the north.
Temple, yes, just a little bit.
Good.
Now,
Does that reflect more or less the colors of the...
I think when you print this out, it comes out more yellow. It won't be as yellow as this, and the red is more it's not a red like a Red Roof Inn. It won't hopefully resemble a Red Roof Inn. It won't be as red as this. I think it just prints out like this in this color.
but basically, is going to be a tannish, goldish color is
An off-white, I think, more.
okay. Just so, and the roof is, what color would you call it?
Terracotta,
A
just like a
terracotta color
terracotta
roof.
tile, yeah.
Okay. And is there any lighting proposed on the building other than security lighting?
Not at this time.
So you're not illuminating the building, there's no light shining on the building, no lights emanating from the building other than security lighting?
Right.
There are no loudspeakers proposed outside the building or anything of that nature?
No, the Buddhist religion is very much a quiet, peaceful, meditative atmosphere, which is what they're trying to achieve here.
Okay. Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any board questions?
Just one question, just to make sure that the record is clear, because one thing, I'm a little confused, the rendering on sheet 5, where it shows
The original
building-
plans are tonight's.
Oh, with these, the little handouts that you gave. Something's not right with that building. in
Yeah,
terms of-
you are absolutely right.
The basement is a little
That,
bit,
you're looking at
Okay.
the bottom photograph, right?
Yeah, the bottom photograph.
Yeah, this is like a three-dimensional view.
Yeah.
So if you look at this, you feel as though the building is shorter than the...
So this is showing the basement a little shorter than it really would be.
That's correct.
So
This
is
was based on
showing
the
it-
original
So
submerged
this is showing the
design.
basement as if it was like a
Right.
crawl space. So really, so the buildings, this is showing the off-white, I think, that you were trying to say,
Right.
maybe the terracotta color. So it's accurate in terms of the architecture and the color, but in terms of the scale, it'll appear a little bit taller. And
Right,
in terms of the height, it would be more like the drawings that you showed up there.
Right. If you
That's
look at...
That's the height. That would more accurately reflect the height.
If you look at plate number 4, it shows the complete profile of the statue and the building and the heights.
Yeah, okay.
So
I
you
just
get
wanted
a
to make
feel.
sure, just in case
Yeah.
the board was relying upon that rendering on 5 to get an understanding of the height and the scale, that it was a little inaccurate, but it would be a little bit taller than shown on there.
It is going to be a little bit taller. This one was doing the 3-story. The other thing is, the cool thing about these architectural renderings, you can make it from the standpoint of a 5-foot-tall person or a 3-year-old child, or, in the bird's eye view, so you can really manipulate the view that you want it to have. But this was done previous to the 3-story building.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Again, for the public, is there anyone who'd like to ask this witness questions concerning her testimony? Then we'll close, and you have another...
Mr. O'Brien.
Excuse me.
Solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do. You gotta tell me who dressed the two of you tonight. I mean,
I think they look heavenly, frankly.
You didn't know that Pete and I were twins separated at birth.
Joseph A. Bank.
I got the memo. I got it.
Mr. O'Brien and I also went to planning school together.
Ask him who got the better grade.
Who got the better grade?
I'm not saying a word. I don't know nothing.
Mr. O'Brien, you're a licensed professional planner in the state of New Jersey.
I am indeed.
And
Okay,
you,
that's good. We've seen Mr. O'Brien many
Okay.
times, so
And
unless
Ms.
his credentials changed.
Still licensed, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. O'Brien, you've sat here through the testimony of the witnesses on behalf of the project, and also met with the witnesses on previous occasions to review the operations and the building and facilities and things of that nature. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And you're also familiar with the zoning ordinance of the Township of Franklin and the master plan of the Township of Franklin. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. Can you indicate to the board why we are here this evening and why we need certain variances, and then opine as to whether the board should grant those variances?
As Mr.
And can you do each variance sort of like independently of one another? Because there are a number of them here with different levels of standard, and I'd rather kind of get a feel for each one.
Sure, sure. The major variance that we're looking for this evening is a D3 conditional use variance. A place of worship is a conditional use in this zone. However, as you know, if it meets all the conditions, it goes for site plan approval to the other board. But if it does not meet any of the conditions that are listed in the ordinance, then it has to come to this board as a conditional use variance because it doesn't meet one or more of the conditions that are imposed in the ordinance. So that's the first one that we're looking for. And that consists of the buffering, the parking location, which is forward of the building, even though the building is hundreds of feet back from the road. The lighting, light spillage is not allowed on adjoining properties, and currently...
And for the record, we're going to remove that variance, Mr. O'Brien, so we don't have to render testimony to that. That lighting will be corrected, so there will be no light spillage on the adjoining property, so that saves part of your testimony.
And then the last piece of the conditional use is the lot area. A 10-acre minimum is required for this use, and the applicant is providing 9.15 acres.
Isn't there a 2.5-story versus 3-story
That's not.
It's not part of the conditional, that's separate,
That
okay.
is separate. And because they are within the footage, they're allowed 50 feet, and they are much less than that, but they exceed the stories with 3 stories as opposed to 2.5 that's allowed. That's a separate variance. That would be considered a bulk variance because it's 3 stories rather than 2.5. It's not a D6 height variance because we're not exceeding the footage. And I'm looking at Mr. Healy. I presume that's the way that we've ruled on this one. Yeah. Okay. So those are the variances required. The conditional use, which is all the little conditions that went along with it, as well as the height of the stories being, going over what is allowed.
And can you then render an opinion, first of all, as to the use variance, as to whether, based on the testimony that you've heard, whether that you feel that the board can grant the conditional use variance and state the reasons why?
A conditional use variance is different from a typical non-conforming use variance that you hear much of the time here. Non-conforming use variance is for a use that is not allowed in the zone at all. That's for when they want to put a gas station in a residential zone or something that is completely out of character with that zone. In that case, an applicant has to meet a very high standard of proof. They've got to prove special reasons. They've got to prove the positive and negative criteria. In this case, because it's a conditional use, the township has already found that the use is allowed in the zone. So we really don't have to go too far down the road to show you that this use is compatible because the township has already said that it is. What we've got to show you is that the site that has been chosen can accommodate the problems that are associated with the conditions that are exceeded by this application. And in that case, those conditions include the buffering. You've heard testimony from the neighbors that, in their opinion, the buffering are fine. You've heard testimony about the parking, concerning whether or not there's sufficient parking, and you've heard from the engineer who says that the parking is adequate for their foreseeable future and will accommodate the people that they anticipate being at this location. The parking location is one of those conditions. And right now, that parking location is well behind where the Buddha is, which is hundreds of feet back from the roadway, as opposed to something that would be very close to the roadway where the neighbors are located, where the current house is located. So even though that parking location is a condition that has to be met, if those parking spaces are never paved, if they're never used, they remain in that park-like setting that has been described.
Mr. Bryan, just to clarify, just make it, so the variance for the parking location, and the requirement is you can't have parking in front of the building. To the extent you have parking in front of the building, it's the banked parking.
Correct.
Okay, so that's the parking that needs the variance. The parking that your client is proposing to improve is back behind the building.
Yeah.
And that's permitted, right?
That's where it's supposed to be.
And actually, there's a minor clarification. It's that part of the parking location section has 2 portions. And believe it or not, once in a while, I agree with Mr. Lanford when we talk about zoning, but when there's 2 parts of it, the majority of is located in a conformance. The part of Section E is that no more than 10% can be located at the front entrance. And because more than 10% is located at the front entrance, but I'm sure as our eminent planner will explain, that's meant to be, because typically the front entrance is located at the front, so it's not in the front of the yard. In this case, the front entrance is at the rear, so while it doesn't technically meet this condition, it meets the intent of it. And I'm sure you'll agree with that opinion.
I would agree with Mr. Domenech's assessment.
What the hell did he say?
What he said.
And in terms of the lot area, which is the last piece, there's a 10-acre minimum. This lot is 9.15 acres. It accommodates what is being proposed on the lot in terms of the building, the parking, accommodating the statue, removing the existing house. So there's enough room to do everything they want to do, as well as accommodate the existing wetlands. So I believe that the lot area condition is a de minimis condition that is being exceeded and really doesn't have a bearing on this because all of the material that they're looking to do on this site can be accommodated without any setback issues, without any problems to the neighbors, and it certainly fits on the site. There are a number of other unique aspects to this application, and I note the hour.
See what happens when you travel a far distance to get here.
I think your suits are causing some form of energy field
There's an-
that's affecting the microphones.
Generating alternate energy here.
You guys are just so electric tonight, I guess that's the...
This is a very different house of worship than...
Could you just,
Off, you may be getting feedback.
Here we go. This is a very different house of worship than the one I was raised in. When I went to St. Mary's, there were masses every day. There were multiple masses on Sundays and on holy days. There were weddings, there were funerals, there were events that were structured at the church on a very regular basis. As you've heard this evening in testimony, this is a very different type of religion. It's not structured, it's not something that accommodates large amounts of people on a regular, weekly, or even daily basis. And in fact, what has been described to you is a place where people come to meditate and contemplate. The statue that is on the property, you've heard testimony, is the largest Buddha in the Western Hemisphere. You didn't even know you had it in Franklin, did you? Cause for community pride. And that also promotes meditation and contemplation. As a church, a place of worship, you know that this is considered an inherently beneficial use by the state, by the people of New Jersey. And this use is rather less intense than other uses that are allowed in this zone, such as hospitals, kennels, schools, and utility installations. The master plan of the township does discuss community facilities with a goal on page 1 of provide adequate community services and facilities to serve the needs of all current and future residents in the township. And this application certainly supports that goal. In terms of the municipal land use law, there's several passages in that law that this application supports, such as item A, to encourage municipal action to guide the appropriate use of or development of all lands in this state, which promotes the general welfare, to provide sufficient space in appropriate locations for a variety of uses. And this application is consistent with those passages by providing an inherently beneficial house of worship in an appropriate place. Because a house of worship is considered inherently beneficial, we take a look at the criteria in a different way than we would a regular use variance. And in that case, we go to the SECA test, which asks 4 questions concerning the negative criteria. And if this application can answer those questions correctly, then the board has the authority to grant a use variance in this case. And the first question is to identify the public interest in this application. And the answer to that is that this provides a house of worship that is inherently beneficial in the state. The second is to identify the detrimental effects that this application has. And we don't see detrimental effects. The neighbors have opined that the proposed buffer and building are acceptable to them. This is not going to have as intense a use as other allowed uses in this particular area. This is a low-intensity use. Peak hours are quite different than the roadway peak hours. And this is a use that, as you've heard through testimony, does not have large congregations meeting on a regular basis, but rather something that happens on a fairly infrequent basis. The third question is the board should consider whether or not there are any detrimental effects and how they can reduce those effects. I can't identify any detrimental effects. The deviations from the conditional use criteria have been addressed, and I think satisfactorily for the board. And the other height variance is a very minor variance, I believe, because this is within the foot requirement. You've heard testimony that the basement can't be placed in the ground, buildings, whether it's 2.5 or 3 stories.
Well, actually, it can, but they'll run into a water problem. They could probably do something like set up a French drain or something, but, so it's not a can't, it would be better if they didn't. Would you go along with that?
Yes.
Okay, good.
Engineers-
So will the man right behind you as well.
The engineers always say they can do anything. It's just a matter of what effort it takes in order to fix that problem. It seems to be easier to have it where it's located. And then lastly, the board has to consider the positive and negative criteria by balancing the public interest against the public detriment. In this case, the public interest is providing a house of worship, and the public detriment has not been identified. So I believe that the benefits of granting the conditional use variance far outweigh any detriments. I would conclude that this application, I believe, can be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantial impairment of the zone plan and the zoning ordinance. And I would welcome any questions. I've tried to keep this a little short, seeing the hour.
Any questions?
I just had a question with the driveway in the back, with cars going by the Buddha. The meditation outside in front of the Buddha, does that get affected? I think that's. The noise from the cars?
That's a good question. Unfortunately, we cannot relocate the Buddha, and our choices are limited. So, will there be a disturbance? Sure, there will be a disturbance. But again, we are relying on the kind of people who come to the temple to be cognizant of the meditation and the statue so that they can, use it. That's all I can say.
Any other questions? We'll open to the public. Is there anyone who has any questions for the planner or wants to make a statement concerning the application? Then we'll close. Anything you want?
Just very.
Come on up. We need your name, and we'll swear you in.
Okay, sir, if you raise your right hand, solemnly swear or affirm to tell the whole truth, nothing but the truth.
Yes, I do.
State your name and address, please.
My first name is Prabodha, Prabodha. Last name Vijayatunga, that like in Sri Lankan. Wije, T like Tom, U in like Nancy, G like Golf, E like Echo. Okay. I live on 14 Emerald in South Brunswick, and I work at 400 Campus Drive, is about 5 miles from here. I'm a pharmaceutical scientist, principal scientist in inhalation. I'm part of the congregation, and I'm a true example of, you don't have to believe me, but I do believe. I'm living today because of this Buddha statue. Because last September, I was traveling India and Sri Lanka, and then I contracted pneumonia with influenza B. I went into a coma for 5 days, was in ICU for 2 weeks, and then in the hospital for a month and a half. So during that time, the 5 days period, I was waking up and going back to coma. The venerable monk had conducted a sermon, a puja, on behalf of me at the temple, and my wife came and told me, this was in Sri Lanka, that incident. Just before that incident, during that five days time, my oxygen level was 65%. My pulses were like 3 to 4 pulses a minute, and it was so erratic, and they believed that I would not even leave that night. So they called my wife, and she came. She's a dentist. She came. At the same time, she told me that. The moment she said that, it struck me how I contributed to build this Buddha statue. I have climbed up there, helping the monk who built it, and all those things within about 30 seconds, it flashed in front of me, right? And from that time onwards, within 20 minutes, my oxygen level raised up to 85, and I never went into coma after that, and I live because of that. So I humbly request the Honorable Chairman as well as the Honorable members, though I do not live in the township, I benefit immensely from this, the statue as well as the congregation. So I would humbly request that you grant permission for us to build this house of worship, because this is not for only Buddhists, because many people, I live about 3 miles from there, and I go there very often to help people. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay.
Peter, I don't think you need to close after that.
I'm done.
Anybody else? Then we will close to the public. Any further comments? That's all right, we closed now. Anything?
I don't think so, Mr. Chairman. Again, we just agreed to certain conditions. We would ask that they be incorporated into the resolution if the board were to approve this, and we would abide by all those conditions. If Mr. Bradshaw wanted to review them, I'm sure we'll get them in the resolution.
Okay, any board questions, comments, or motion?
Okay. You want to make it?
By all means, go ahead.
All right.
Have you got the list? Because I've been...
No, I have sort of a list, but listen to my list and then
All right.
we'll go ahead from
Go
there.
ahead.
Okay. I move that we grant the New Jersey Buddhist Vihara a D3 conditional use variance and site plan to construct a new 3-story worship building at 4299 Route 27, Princeton, New Jersey. That's the mailing address. It's in Franklin Township, subject to the following conditions. On the major holiday of Vesa, that the lighting be limited only to one weekend, that the capacity be limited to 399 plus 5, that at the time of the major holidays, that the organization make arrangements for off-site parking, that the current parking plan be limited to the 138 spaces which the township finds acceptable, and that the 2 additional spaces requested by the applicant not be permitted, that if they decide to unbank the parking spaces in the front of the property, that they meet with the adjacent homeowners to discuss whether or not any additional buffering would be desired by the homeowners, and the buffering that would be required would be up to what is required under the ordinance, but that otherwise the buffering at the present time be limited to what is proposed in the plan. And then the other thing that I thought about is maybe they should have some sort of, I don't know how you even phrase this, some sort of, like they would hire a policeman to do traffic, off-duty policeman to do traffic control during the major holiday.
Yeah, typically what you require is that you have them meet with the police, and the police and them make a determination, because the police may say they don't need it.
Okay, well, I'm sure that our attorney can handle that part of it. He's making a face like he can, so that's good. Laura, is there anything else?
Yeah, that the first floor be limited to storage and mechanicals. And I suppose it's not necessary to include this, but Mr. Healy's report said that there'd be a lot consolidation and a new permeability test.
If required, because there's...
If required. And that the engineering report be complied with, and the stormwater, particularly with respect to stormwater, that there be an attempt to reconcile that with Mr. Hauk.
That sounds pretty comprehensive. Is there a second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Mr. Betterbid?
4.
Yeah.
Ms. Grumman?
4.
Mr. Johnson?
4.
Mr. McCracken?
4.
Mr. Rich?
4.
Mr. Shepherd?
4.
Chairman Thomas?
4.
Thank you very much.
Well, if there's no further business, we'll entertain a motion for,
Moved.